energy sector
enterprise
team that is joining us, and we are going to be updated on some recommendations coming out of the team and the work that it has been doing. I'm going to invite, we have, just to introduce members on the head table, to my immediate left here, from the private sector organization, Mr. Food, Mr. Matalon, our information minister, the chairman of ESET, and a member of the committee as well, Professor Wind. I'm now going to turn things over to Minister Falk.
Good morning, everyone, and we thank you for coming. And again, let me thank you also for coming out an hour earlier. This special press briefing is only about ESET. We will give you more information on another briefing we'll be having later in the week. As you may recall, in June of last year, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet appointed the Electricity Sector Enterprise Team, ESET. And that team is chaired by Dr. Vincent Lawrence. And they were to look at the affordability of electricity rates, sustain the ability of operations, and also to look at the reliability of supply. Yesterday, the team, which has been working extremely hard, briefed the Cabinet on some developments, and I'm going to turn over to Dr. Vincent Lawrence, who will update you.
Thank you, Madam Minister, and good morning, everyone. I thank you all for being here this morning. You were here on September the 16th, and we promised you that we'd try to brief you sometime around the end of November. Instead, we're doing it at the end of January 2015. We indicated when we met last time, you recall, if I could just briefly remind of some of the issues that we had discussed at the last time. We went through our mandate, which essentially the Minister had outlined, but it also specifically talked about additional base load capacity and related facilities in the short term. And that this was aimed at reducing the cost of electricity to consumers and ensuring diversification of the fuel supply mix. And the second part of our mandate is to make recommendations to government about procurement policy that will be consistent with best practices and responsive to Jamaica's requirements. In other words, we were not just come with a boilerplate procurement, but to look at what is involved that would satisfy our requirements. So I thought it was important to remind of that mandate. Now, at the last briefing, we did advise you that we had been reviewing issues, and we outlined, which we'll speak to again very shortly, the consultations that we've been having on this issue. And we pointed out that there were, as far as electric power sector policy and modernization, as would be reflected in the Electricity Lighting Act, as well as issues related to the All-Island Electric License, which is the license between the government and the utility company JPS. We looked at all of those, and we commented that we felt that there may be need for some modernization, and they need to be studied, to be looked at with regards to those documents. And as a matter of fact, we completed looking at the issues around the Electricity Power Sector Lighting Act, advised the Ministry. In consultations with the Ministry of Energy, those have been more or less agreed, and I think Cabinet has signed off submissions from the Ministry of Energy on that issue, and I think there's due to be a new Electricity Lighting Act tabled in Parliament before too long, but that's for the Ministry of Energy to deal with. But we did have our own inputs into that, and we are continuing to look at other issues such as the All-Island Electric License Act between the government and JPSCO. We also advised you that we had looked at a rapid assessment of the existing strategies and plans, and we've been working on an integrated resource plan, and that continues to be in progress. We highlighted to you in September the issues around aging fleet of thermal plants and what this meant in the whole issue of ensuring that we got new plants and secured investments for new modern facilities. And we spoke a little bit about the challenges of the industry, whereby there was need to be some level of certainty in the planning process, and that the rate of return on investments had to be such that these investments could be achieved. And we also spoke to the fact that for the utility to deliver cheaper costs to the end user, which is to the customer, we need to ensure that the whole pricing structure was such, and the efficiencies were such, and the investment costs were such, that we achieve the lowest cost. I think that in summary is what we summarized and we were going, and then we next went on to tell you of our plan at the time to acquire about 380 megawatts of power, about 190 megawatts to be installed by JPSCO, 140 megawatts from Cogeneration at Alpart, and 50 megawatts from Cogeneration at Jamalco, and the overall benefits to the economy that that mix would create. We did discuss that and present. And then we agreed that the next steps, which we would report on at some time, that we would attempt to analyze and do due diligence on issues related to this base load power generation that we've been talking about. That is the JPS 190, the Alpart 140, and the Jamalco 50. We would check on the credibility of fuel sources. We would look at the financial proposals and development plans within the framework of some least cost expansion and within the framework of our integrated resource plan. And from there, we would look at coordinating the terms of generating licenses and power purchase agreements that the JPSCO would have to enter into at the utility. And thereafter, once we've gotten past that stage, we will be looking at facilitating permitting and other development processes so that we can get financial closing on all of these projects by the end of the first half, between Q2 and Q3 of this year, in other words, the second quarter and the third quarter of this year. And then we'd try to aim for commissioning of these plants somewhere around the end of 2017. I think that's where we left off at the last meeting. And so, no, it was 2017 in what we reported. What we spoke about in 2016, and we mentioned that shortly, is the commencement of it, but we're talking about the completion. The commencement involved activities at Bogue, etc., and we said we derived those benefits beginning in 2016. But that is correct, sir. We did say 2016 as far as the beginning to derive benefits, but the achieving of the objective we wanted to do by the end of by the end of 2017. That is essentially what we said and what we are still aiming to produce. I am fairly pleased to note that we continued in the interim period since we last met, we continued with a number of our stakeholder consultation meetings, and we continue to have the key players in the industry having discussions with us. This includes the JPS, the bauxite and alumina sector, as we spoke about with the cogeneration activities, the Ministry of Science, Technology, Energy and Mining, the Office of the Utility Regulators, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the independent power producers, current independent producers that we have, mainly Jamaica Energy Partners and Jamaica Private Power, JPPC. Now, we have had technical and financial submissions from the three entities who are planning to build, own, and operate power plants. And I recall the three entities now are JPS, the Alpart venture, and the Jamalco venture. We have also conducted an assessment of the gas market. We've looked at the trends, the costs, shipping issues, and we have begun the process of comparative study of electricity policy and framework, not only across the region, but in looking on generally at best practices in countries that we believe may have similar conditions to ours, and also in other countries, developed countries, to see if we can arrive at what we see as best practices in going forward. Our analysis of the potential generators for the electricity to the grid, we had, if you recall, 4 proposals. JPS was related to 2 of the 4 proposals. And I am a little repetitive here, but I think it's important that we understand the differences. JPS had 2 activities. One was to convert the Bogue plant, that's to convert the feedstock from automotive diesel oil, which we call ADO, to gas. And then also the JPS new 190 megawatt plant, and the Jamaica venture, which is the 50 megawatts, and the Alpart venture, which is the 140 megawatts. Those are the 4 activities, but 2 of them fell under JPS. We have also had several other entities that have presented proposals to us. Varying types, renewables, biomass, waste to energy. We've had some fossil types, those are the non-fossil types, and we have had fossil types like pet coke, etc. We've had several proposals also submitted to us. But we still feel very strongly that the equation and the model that we selected in September is the one that should be pursued in the short term meaning now. Remember, we have a short-term problem in that we have 292 megawatts of obsolete power, which needs to be very inefficient, needs to be retired, and so we need to immediately get new generating capacity in place. Now, let us speak a little bit about the proposals. The feedstock conversion at JPS at the Bogue Power Plant. This plant is a 115 megawatt plant and is to be converted to gas. The capital investment there required for that conversion, and this is just the conversion of retrofitting the burners at the plant, is estimated to be about $15 million. And the US dollars, estimated to be US $15 million. And you will see that in the recent rate determination that the OUR has allowed the JPSCO, the $50 million as it relates to the specifics of the conversion of, or the retrofitting of the burners. The project, however, is considerably more than that, because one has to get gas to the plant. So the 50 million relates to retrofitting and changing the burners, but there's significant more capital that will be required and to be invested somehow in order to get gas to the plant at Montego Bay. The targeted completion for that is still the end of this year, 2015, so it could begin to take effect in 2016. There are some challenges related to that target, but we think it can still be met at the end of 2015, and the challenges really relate to getting the gas supply, because there's a permitting issue to be dealt with regards to permitting from the environmental agencies, and then to have the facilities built to deliver the power, deliver the gas to the plant site. We do, JPS has submitted to us a number of proposals that they have, and these proposals vary from being able to deliver the gas by the 4th quarter of this year, which is sometime in the period between October and December, to delivering the gas by the 2nd quarter of next year, which would be sometime between April and June. So that's the sort of leeway that we're looking at, but we are actively trying to make sure that it happens in the 4th quarter of this year. With regards to the second JPS activity, which is the generation replacement strategy, I mentioned to you that from the last time that there's 292 megawatts of heavy fuel oil power plants at Old Harbor and Hunts Bay that needs to be replaced. And at the 190 megawatt gas turbine power plant will be built at Old Harbor, and we'll also build a terminal near to the existing JPS site in Old Harbor Bay premises. That terminal is the terminal to receive gas. So that will be built in the Old Harbor area. The Jamaica Public Service Company has exercised its right. It has indicated and has written to us by letter of January 23rd, 2015, that it proposes to exercise its right of first refusal to build that 190 megawatt plant to replace the obsolete generating capacity. So it's a 190 megawatt gas-fired cogeneration power plant at Old Harbor. And they have opted to it's not cogen, the 190 megawatt gas-fired power plant, not cogeneration, apologies. And that's an option that they have exercised. And the JPS has agreed to a power tariff, which would be no more than about 12.89 US cents per kilowatt, per kilowatt hour. So that essentially is the basic agreement as the generating capacity. Now remember, there are transmission costs and other costs to get to the consumer. This is the cost to the grid from the generation, the 12.89 US cents per kilowatt hour. Okay? The Alpart gas turbine cogen development, which is the third activity, the Alpart venture, and in the venture with Alpart is a company called American Ethane Company. And that venture, they propose to build, own, and operate a 140 megawatt gas turbine cogeneration facility. So they would supply steam to the alumina refinery and power to the grid. The power plant will be located on the Alpart plant site at Nain in St. Elizabeth, and they have committed to a power price to the grid of 12.99 cents per kilowatt hour. They would interconnect to the grid at this stage, because remember Old Harbor had no issue of interconnection because power plants are there, but Alpart will have an issue of interconnecting to the grid. They would interconnect to the grid would be to the 138 kV power line, past to Spur Tree, and that they are in discussions with the JPS to finalize as part of a power purchase agreement. You are aware of the significance of the fact of this cogeneration development, because last month the Minister of Mining made some specific announcements as it relates to the Alpart plant and what was happening there as of January. And a large part of that relates to the fact that we have agreed to take power from the plant to the grid. And it has sort of changed the whole economics of the equation, both on the power side and on the alumina production side. So that should have significant benefit in both areas to the country. And I know you had a lot to report on Minister Paulwell's releases as related to the restart, the reopening of the Alpart plant. This is directly connected to the reopening of the Alpart plant. The next project, which is the Jamaica power plant development for a 50 megawatt coal-fired cogeneration facility. That plant is to be located on the Jamaica plant site at Halsall. And again, this plant will provide steam to the alumina refinery, the Jamaica alumina refinery, and it's supposed to supply 50 megawatts to JPS, and you recall that we reported that this would have been on the recommendation coming from the majority partner at that time, would have been a coal-fired plant. We have not completed our due diligence on the Jamalco operations. And the reason for our not completing the due diligence, so we're not able to report specifically on that at this stage, is that there has been a change in ownership at Jamalco, which I'm sure you're all aware of, whereby the Noble Group in December last year acquired Alcoa's share in Jamalco. And with the change of ownership, Noble Group has indicated a definite interest in the energy solution and a commitment to ensuring an energy solution, but they have themselves wanted to review and analyze and make their own decisions on the appropriate path. They are leaning very heavily towards what Alcoa had recommended, but they are also reanalyzing and ensuring that it's best for what they would want to do as a new majority partner at Alcoa. So that has delayed us a little bit. So essentially, with Jamalco doing its own due diligence on what are the various power generation options. In other words, it may or may not be a coal generation, or if it is, how it is implemented. But we now have assurances that they will finish their full review and have a decision by the end of February. That is the end of this month. So we are expecting very shortly after that to be able to complete our own analysis and work and our own specifications on as far as the Jamalco power plant is concerned. I should just indicate to you that if you recall, the 2 or 3 months delay that this has caused, the change in ownership, it will not cause a delay, in our opinion, in the completion, because other activities are continuing which will facilitate the process. It's just that the certain decisions along the way, which were not on the critical path, are held a bit.
Are we looking at 330?
No, well, we so far have looked at 330. There's a further 50 from Jamalco.
Not in the mix.
It could be in the mix, but we will have a decision by the end of February. In other words, it is still included in the equation that we are considering. We cannot be definitive about that equation this morning because of the change in ownership at Jamalco, and they themselves wanting to review and look back at what the situation is. And so from that point of view, we are not able to be definitive this morning at this particular briefing. But we would expect to be able to be very definitive at whatever briefing, the next briefing we have, because they are committed to complete their process before the end of February. And that's with our own agreement and understanding, and as I said to you, is not affecting the project schedule, as what we're doing is not in the critical path of our timing of what was planned and what was reported at the last time we spoke to you. ESET met with the Cabinet yesterday and outlined what we've just outlined to you as to where we are with regards to our progress. And we also, before that, and at the Cabinet meeting, the Cabinet approved issuing to GPS authorizing to develop the 190 megawatt of generating capacity. So they haven't advised that they would want to exercise their right of first refusal. We are now going to write to them this week, authorizing them to proceed with the 190 megawatt generating capacity. We also have been authorized by Cabinet to continue our review of best practices across the sector and worldwide in the electricity sector. And we discussed with Cabinet, because we are working with the World Bank on this. The World Bank has given us some great assistance. They have really been good partners in the work that we've been doing. And they are assisting us in looking at the various best practices, etc. And this cabinet approved that for us to proceed on that. We'll try and finish that work within the next 4, at most 6 months, but certainly we hope for 4 months, where we will review all these practices with an issue to ensuring that the all-island electricity license is such that it is in the best interests of the country as far as what the government agrees with JPS to do. And there are issues related to such as reliability, viability of JPS, and the issues of investment in the electricity sector. Investment is very critical because what we're all talking about here with building 380 megawatts is all related to how we achieve investments, and that's just on the generating side. We have significant capital on the transmission and distributions side. You notice that there's even some debate recently in the paper with the unfortunate death in the Papine area, outside University Hospital. Those poles, everything, are all a part of the transmission system. And there's significant infrastructure which certainly needs to be looked at as far as some of these things are concerned. But that's just a side comment that I'm making at this stage. We also had Cabinet approved for the negotiation of a power purchase agreement between the Alpart venture and JPS for the 140 megawatts of power to the grid from its gas-fired cogeneration plant at Alpart in St. Elizabeth. So we will be also writing to the JPS code this week to authorize them to enter into negotiations with the Alpart venture. I had indicated to you earlier that we had agreed an arrangement with the Alpart venture, and I'd given an indication as to the pricing per kilowatt hour for the electricity. And also, Cabinet agreed that we should continue studying the 50 megawatt of coal-fired generation at Jamaica, and we should subject it to further analysis before providing any definitive recommendations. This is what I said to you earlier, and Cabinet agreed that we would delay any final decision on Jamaica until we had completed the further analysis, and we would be able to give them significantly more definitive recommendations. As our next steps, we will continue to finalize the detailed project and execution plan with the various entities in order to provide the most cost-effective power tariff to the grid. And why this is the part of our mandate, and we want to look at an effective, sustained, lowest cost possible power price to the consumer. We want to target the commencement of the execution stage, in other words, where people can see ground being turned of the projects before the end of this year. So in other words, to get all the things done, the financial closing, all the engineering designs, and etc. Procurement of equipment, EPC management, we want to see all of that commencing so that some physical work can commence before the end of the year on these activities. And I repeat, these are very critical because we have 292 megawatts of obsolete capacity which will begin to drop out of the grid in a couple of years, by 2017, and we have no plan to not achieve our objective, because otherwise we think it could be quite devastating for the economy. Those of us who have been around long enough will remember the days of double block and triple block load shedding, and that would be very, very disastrous for our production. With the assistance of the multilaterals, we will continue to assess these proposals, and we'll be looking at all issues: legal, technical, commercial, and financial. And we're going to be benchmarking all of these with global standards and set our own key performance indicators as KPIs to ensure that what we have spoken about will be achieved. Key performance indicators. And we are, as we said earlier, the benchmarking will involve significant comparative study of the licensing framework and the regulatory framework of electricity sectors as a part of the recommendation that I indicated to you earlier, that Cabinet approved that this work should continue, and the World Bank we had asked the World Bank for assistance, and they are doing some work on this for us to help us to be sure that we are setting the framework for the next 20, 30 years of our electricity sector. That essentially is our update as to where we are today, and I trust you'll find what the information we provided to be useful. We think we have made some significant progress over the period, and we look forward to the successful completion of our activities.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. We are going to open the floor for questions. Let me remind you of the rules. You have one question and a follow-up, and if we have time, we will go around the room again. So, Newstock.
Good morning, members of the head table. Dr. Lawrence, if at the end of the due diligence, Jamaica finds that it's not viable to provide that 50 megawatts, what alternative has the ESET team come up with?
In doing our integrated resource planning, we feel that there's a range of issues with regards to, and it's not necessarily 380 megawatts that we need to replace. We think anywhere from about 320 up to 380 megawatts can satisfy what we would need at this particular time. So even if that was to fall by the wayside, and I don't believe it will fall by the wayside by itself, it may vary. It may be less or more, and we would prefer it, if anything, for it to be less. But it would not create an issue by itself for us. I should also point out to you that we have been looking at a few other things. We've had proposals from the Pan-Caribbean Sugar Company as it relates to as much as 20 megawatts. They want to burn bagasse. And what part of the assessment is the assurance that it could be base load generating capacity, because we want to be sure that it's not a variable, not an intermittent supply, such as the other renewables. And so the classification as biomass rate will be classified under renewables. But we are also looking to see how much of a base load that could be, and it's one of the things that we would encourage. So what I'm trying to say to you is there are a few options and alternatives that we see there that could be similarly mutually beneficial to the sectors.
Do we have any other questions? Gary? No questions? Hopetown? I thought you were going to surprise me today.
No, surprises. Not today, anyway. Mr. Chairman, I just have some problems. When you last came to us and you muted the idea of energy coming from Maine, St. Elizabeth, somewhere there, we were of the opinion that we indicated to you, and in fact you accepted that there was going to be losses in terms of transmission losses from Nain to
the load centers.
Wherever the load center is.
Yeah, really
because,
Kingston and Mobay.
Yeah, because you already have a KV line passing through somewhere in Mali, or somewhere there.
Yes.
Therefore, it is a matter of tying in whatever is coming in. I think it's 138 KVs.
They're the 138 kV line, and I mentioned a while ago in the
Right.
presentation that they would tie into that 138 kV line.
Right. Okay, so I'm saying to you that you mentioned that this proposed theme thing for Alpart. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes?
Yeah. And you're saying 12.99 cents per kilowatt hour from the generating plant to the grid, but you don't know what it's going to be to the consumer. And this is misleading. I don't understand you.
No, it is clarifying that very clearly pointed out to you that if you remember what our targets were, if you look back at our targets, we spoke about the reduction of about 30% in this is assuming a constant fuel price, not taking into account the depreciation in the oil prices recently. But at a constant fuel price, we wanted to achieve a 30% saving to the reduction in costs to the consumer. The costs were varying somewhere between 38 cents at a constant price figure, between 38 cents and 42 cents. Could use an average of 40 cents per kilowatt hour to the consumer. Of that 38 or 42 cents to the consumer, the generating portion of it was certainly, or let's put, I'm not explaining it properly. You know, there's the non-fuel portion and there's the fuel portion in your electricity costs.
Let me make it simple for you, please. Please.
No, but I'm just trying to make
what
sure.
What I'm concerned about is what is going to happen.
We are
the final price to the consumer.
We are still aiming on that benchmark, 30% reduction, and we're expecting that instead of the 40 cents, US 40 cents that it was costing, it will be more down in the range of somewhere between 26 to 27 cents. That's what we are expecting. And these prices will achieve that. We'll accommodate that and we'll achieve it.
Okay. I just have one other question too. When we last met, you said that Bogue was a low-hanging fruit.
Yes, sir.
To quote it correctly. And we are now hearing that Bogue is not only just Bogue, but there's also a secondary plan in terms of the automotive feedstock, which was not mentioned.
No. When I spoke about the automotive diesel oil, that is what Bogue currently uses. Bogue currently uses very expensive automotive diesel oil. That's what goes to the burners to drive the engines. The conversion of Bogue is away from the automotive diesel oil to gas. So it involves the changing or the retrofitting of all of the burners. The cost of retrofitting all of those burners is approximately US $15 million. So it's a change from the ADO to gas that we're talking about.
So that's not an additional source then?
So it's not an additional source. It is a repetition of and a clarification maybe.
So that's an obsolete. That's obsolete. And you know, taking a more efficient source of gas.
Of gas. In other words, we are retrofitting for a more efficient source of gas.
Thank you.
And that is why we don't count that 115 megawatt in the new capacity.
You don't count it?
No, the Bogue isn't 150 megawatt. That Bogue is a part of bringing the cost down to the consumer. It is not new capacity. The new capacity is the 190 megawatt from JPS at Old Harbour, the 140 megawatt from Alpart at Nain, and the 50 megawatt from Jamalco. So that really is the new capacity. The Bogue is a retrofitting.
Is it clear, Hopetown? No, it's not clear. What is not clear? No, Hopetown, hold on. What is not clear? Give him back the mic, let us find out. What is not clear?
I'm saying if Bogue is a low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
And if at the time this document was prepared, Cabinet did not approve the retrofitting of $15 million US to JPS. I mean, how come we are now talking about this 15 million to be taken from consumers' pockets, and at the time it was not approved? I don't understand that.
No,
that
the regulator.
All
right, there are two parts to your question. There are two parts. The first part is the existing Bogue plant is a part of JPS's current assets. They own it. Being a part of their current assets, they are free to convert or not to convert.
With approval from the OUR.
With approvals.
Yes.
Okay? one of the things we encouraged them to do, because when we did the analysis on the cost of the heavy fuel as against the cost of gas, it was a low-hanging fruit to immediately bring some benefits to the consumer. Because the conversion from fuel oil to gas made it very, very important and useful to lower the costs to the consumer. So that's what the low-hanging fruit is about. It's not a part of the new capacity. It's a part of the mandate to deal with, make it efficient and bring the costs down. If you remember at the mandate, when I repeated, we had two mandates. One was to get the new generating capacity in, and as a part of that, to get the lowest costs to the consumer. So that's a part of the equation.
Can I add, I think it's important to understand that although in the OUR process that $15 million will be passed on to consumers, the payback period is extremely fast. And so the benefit to consumers from that bulk conversion will be felt within a year. And so it's an investment, yes, but it's an investment that rapidly pays a return. So that's why it's still a low-hanging fruit.
Just to add as well, I think it's important because ESET did not recommend that the $15 million be placed into the rate determination. That was a decision by the OUR.
So why didn't you recommend that? Because you wanted this low-hanging fruit to be brought into this mix as quickly as possible.
It could have happened either way. I mean, it's not an issue because the payback is so fast. So we would not have objected to that.
Kayla, you had a follow-up? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. The 27 cents that you spoke about earlier, when do you expect to see that?
That's our target for 2018.
2018. Okay.
Yes, sir. As of 2018.
Any other question? Hope that you've really taken over the
I am a little concerned. No, I'm not taking over anything. Don't worry about that. Don't worry.
I want to explain
I'm just
everything
trying
you
to
want
get
to explain.
clarity to the consumer because I'm a consumer too, and I'm sure you are.
We are consumers.
And if there's any modeling, we need to clear it up from here. I just want to say here that there has been a legal challenge to the license that JPS has been operating under. I hear there's talk about reviewing the license. Okay? What is the objective of renewing this license in light of the fact that under the new power mix, JPS will almost soon become a minority player? Apart from the distribution that they are doing, they'll soon almost become a minority player because they will have 190, not even new capacity. This is, no, the 190 Bogue. 115 is
They're going to put in a 119 new plant. That JPS has two activities. Remember I told you that there were 4 activities, 2 of which were JPS. And I mentioned the 2 JPS. One was at Bogue, which is the 115 megawatt plant, which is being retrofitted. It's an existing plant and converted from heavy fuel oil to gas. The second is a new 190 megawatt gas-fired plant.
No. That don't add up. 190 and 115 don't make 380 plus the other. Plus 140 don't make.
No. Let me add them again.
I'm trying to ask a question.
No, I want it to be clear, please. Let's separate the two things. Let's separate the two things. We will deal first with the new capacity, the new generating capacity. There are 3 activities with the new generating capacity.
Okay, good.
1, JPSCO, exercising its right of first refusal and building a 190 megawatt plant. New capacity. Second new capacity is the Alpart venture, building a 140 megawatt plant.
Steam plant.
Gas-fired plant, producing both steam and power. The power is to the grid. The steam is to the alumina plant.
Production.
For their production.
Okay, good.
Jamalco, 50 megawatts. The 50 megawatts, similar to Alpart, is to the grid and steam to the alumina plant to facilitate production. So that's 190 plus 140 plus 50, which gave 380.
Yeah, 380.
And I indicated that we have signed off on 330 of that 380. We are still looking at the Jamalco whilst we wait on them on the 50 megawatts. Further to that, as a part of the cost reduction, and now this is not a part of new generating capacity, this is a part of the effort, because the new generating capacity contributes to lower costs because we're improving the efficiencies. We're improving the efficiencies of the plant with new equipment, and we're improving the cost of fuel by going to gas instead of heavy fuel oil. To continue the mandate of the lowest cost to the consumer, we had also proposed, and that's why we call it a low-hanging fruit, because it's already in existence, not needing to be built, and could be carried out immediately in 2015. And that activity is to stop them using a very expensive fuel, the automotive diesel oil, and convert it to gas. And the amount of the capacity of the overall system that's involved with that plant, but it is not new capacity, it is just retrofitted capacity, is 115 megawatts.
Okay, thank you. And finally, sir, trust me, finally, the whole question of the Biden plan. There was an initiative recently. You have not mentioned anything about that, and I'm sure it's going to have a significant impact on fuel supply, and that is so important.
All right, it helps. I should only say to you that the proposals that we have had from JPS and the number of proposals that they've submitted for gas supply predominantly indicated the possibility of gas coming from the Gulf, which is from the US. And so we consider the Biden initiative or the Biden proposals or the Biden statements to be a positive along the route that we had expected, because we had been expecting, based upon market conditions and everything else, that it would be useful and advantageous to both sets of parties for the U.S. to open up its export facilities.
No, we had expected it.
No, it only makes sure that we, in evaluating the options, it gives us a certain greater level of certainty in evaluating the options.
Thank you, Hopetown. Thank you very much. And I am sure members of ESET will, if you have additional questions, I know some of you may want to have a private question or two. I am sure they'll be gracious enough to give you a few minutes. We want to thank you for coming, and to let you know we'll advise you tomorrow of another briefing which will be held on Thursday. So we will advise you of the details. Thank you and have a great day.
Okay, thank you very much.
Brought to you by Telligence Inc. Telligence Inc., turning broadband and internet into services.